Hi there, cherry pies. Shadow work is my bag. If you've been around for any longer than 10 minutes, I'm sure you've probably noticed that. And I'm sure if you're here for the first time, you may have noticed that from the look of my banner that's on the top of my YouTube channel and my website and so on and so forth. If you are not certain what shadow work is or what the concept of the shadow means in psychology, then first of all, Google is obviously your friend. But second of all, I do have a shadow work playlist where I've collected together everything that I have so far said on my channel about shadow work. And you can also use the search functionality over on kellyannemaddox.com as well to have a look at any blog posts I've written about the subject over the years, because I have been around for a little while now. I have so much more to say about shadow work. I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface yet, and it is something that I need to hunker down and get on with discussing. So many questions come up about shadow work time and time again, and I'm going to do my best in 2016 to answer a lot of them. And I'm also going to be putting out other kinds of content in other places about shadow work too. One of the main things about shadow work for me is how much it has helped me personally and how much it illuminated me and helped me on my path once I realised that it was a thing, and once I had read about Jung's theory of the shadow aspect in psychology. A lot of things just came together for me in that moment, because I feel like I've always been somewhat of a shadow worker ever since I gained a sense of my own, a sense of awareness of who I was and the things that I was happy with and not happy with about myself, and the nature of my own journey as a human being and what it is to actualise and my obstacles to actualisation and stuff like that. Ever since I've had that concept down, I've been doing shadow work even before I knew it, you know, and I think a lot of people that come to an understanding of what shadow work is actually say to themselves, well shit, I've already been doing that. I didn't know I was doing it, but I have actually been doing it. In much the same way when I talk about pantheism, I know a lot of people have found my videos from way back about pantheism and have actually written to me and said, you know, I've been a pantheist for ages, but I just didn't know there was a word for it, and I've had this long garbled explanation that I've always kind of rolled out to people like a kind of very loud Persian rug whenever anyone asks me about my spiritual orthodoxy, my beliefs, you know, how I think things are set up. But actually pantheism explains it perfectly, and shadow work now can do the same thing for a lot of people as well. A lot of people who do delve down into the dark, seedy underbelly of the psyche, to where all the tentacles and the grisly shit is, you know, underneath the surface, to try and find the root that leads to the stem of a problem that they experience in life, now have this handy little moniker for it, shadow work, and it's like, oh, I've already been doing that. No, that is something that I do, you know. Today I want to talk about whether or not shadow work could actually be deemed as negative, and whether or not actually doing shadow work is really just a way of consistently focusing on the negative shit and therein positively reinforcing the negative shit, or spending too long kind of buried in or shrouded by the negative shit, and whether or not that's harmful, you know, whether or not that's actually a good idea. Because I know that is a discussion that does come up when we are addressing shadow work. Some people do feel that shadow work is actually anathema to personal development and is anathema to personal progression, and even anathema just to being positive about your life and about living your life. A lot of people see shadow work as somewhat the business of shrouding yourself in the bullshit and actually spending more time focused on what's going wrong and what's negative and what you feel badly about, what your perceived flaws are, your bad memories, the things that didn't go right in childhood. I think to some people it seems very counterintuitive to focus on that stuff, and I can completely understand where that idea may come around. Of course, it's not my personal belief, obviously, but I can understand where it comes from, and I definitely I wouldn't discount the genuine concern that obviously underpins that principle. So let's just get down to brass tacks. Is shadow work negative? Is shadow work actually counterintuitive? Is it unhelpful? One of the first things I say to clients who come to me to go on a process of shadow work, one of the first things I say to people who watch my channel and have questions about shadow work, is that it's best to know what your intentions are, and it's best to keep clear on those intentions and keep those intentions in mind, because shadow work can get very messy, very complicated. I basically see it as somewhat of a crazy spider's web that's made out of treacle. There's all of these different lines and threads that take you in different directions, but then you realise that they all amalgamate together and they cross over in different ways, and it's all very, you know, it's very kind of hallucinogenic and psychedelic and crazy and fun. But it can also be a little bit easy to get lost down there and to forget what you actually came for. It's like when you walk into a room that's just covered with boxes and knickknacks and bric-a-brac and things, and then you very quickly actually forget what it was that you came into the room for. You forget what you're looking for, you know. So I like to see a statement of intention, a statement of commitment to your intentions with shadow work as a really good place to begin the process. If you know that you're coming to a process of shadow work with really good reasons, if you know that you are doing it to get to know yourself more, to understand what actually underpins and underlies the negative patterns that you see creeping into your life on a consistent basis, then you are beginning on the right foot. You're beginning from the right place, and that's definitely a bloody good start. As to whether or not shadow work is negative, my personal view on the process is this. Something may feel negative without actually inherently being negative. I said this in my shadow work real talk video, which I will link for you down below in the doobly doobly doo, and it's one of my walk around and spit it raw type videos that I like to do. In my shadow work real talk video, I did say that shadow work is not a fucking walk in the park, it's not a children's birthday party, okay? It can get painful and it can have some shocking realizations in it, and it can take you to some places that you never thought that you would need to go in your psyche, and it can make you very aware of things that you had so far been blind to or in denial of. And yes, there can be tears before bedtime, and yes, it can be unpleasant and unsettling in certain ways and at certain times. But my feeling is that just because certain parts of it can feel a little bit rough and ready doesn't mean in any sense that it is indeed inherently a negative thing to do. I don't really like to use the words positive and negative when it comes to any tools that are supposed to further self-development and trigger a process of self-actualization. I actually much prefer the words helpful and unhelpful. I think they are far more valuable as markers to help us establish and address whether what we are doing or not doing is good for us. If you're looking at something honestly that is going on in your psyche, and you're looking at it maybe for the first time, and you're really going through a process of radical acceptance, which is where you actually look at something for what it is, not for what it used to be, not for what you wish it could be, but for what it actually fucking is right now. And it hurts to look at the truth of it, and it really makes your throat ache and the tears come, and it just feels so overwhelming because you are in the full light of that truth. Does that mean that it's a negative experience, that you shouldn't be doing it? You know, I mean, sometimes truths are hard to appreciate, they are hard to confront, and they are hard to accept. But that is really a lot of the time the foundation from which great growth actually comes. Some of the truths that I've had to accept in my life on this planet have been incredibly difficult, and they have led me to a feeling of great loneliness and great loss and confusion. But the seeds that have been planted in my willingness to confront those hard truths have flourished into some of the best things I could ever have in my life, and some of my best understandings about who I am and what I'm really fucking capable of, regardless of conditioning, regardless of programming, regardless of what anybody ever told me I could be or couldn't be. Those dark truths that I was brave enough to confront have led to my flourishing, they have led to my evolution, they have led to my fucking triumph. And so no, I don't think that in those dark moments I shouldn't have been doing what I was doing. I was looking at things that I really needed to look at. I was experiencing radical acceptance, which, like I just said, is the process of seeing what's really there, because that's where you work from. How the hell do you know where you want to go on the map if you don't know where you are right now and what's there right now and what the truth is right now? Your marker for whether or not something is actually positive or negative is the spectrum from helpful to unhelpful. So for me, if I'm doing some shadow work on a particular topic and it's really starting to feel a bit gritty and it's really starting to get a bit low down and filthy, and it's like, oh, it's really, I'm cutting close to the bone here, I'm getting close to what I need to get close to, it's feeling a bit icky, you know, but I'm in there with both feet, I'm definitely going for it because I know I'm getting to a kernel of truth. If I'm doing that and I kind of stop and I have a moment with myself where I say, is this helpful right now or is this unhelpful? Is this leading me somewhere that is ultimately going to be helpful to me and good for me in my journey? If my answer to that question is hell yeah, then I carry the fuck on, absolutely. And yeah, there may be tears and it may feel bad, and I may realise that it probably has a lot more to do with me than it does to do with the other person, or that I've been labouring under a misapprehension, I've been lying to myself and the truth is about to be laid bare. Yeah, that does feel a bit crazy and a bit icky and a bit like, ooh, I really would rather not look at that. But let's be honest, it's helpful because I'm actually looking at something that needs to be looked at. I am taking the blindfold off, I'm taking off, you know, the veneer that I've been looking at life through of my own kind of egoic constructs that are allowing me to see things the way I want to see them. I am removing that and I'm looking at what's really there. Does that feel positive 100% of the time? No. Is it helpful? Yes. That's what I'm interested in. Is it helpful? Or is it unhelpful? The way that I know that a process of shadow work has become unhelpful is when I've lost my sense of what I'm actually there for. Okay, so I've come into the room, but I've lost my sense of why I was there, and I'm actually spending way too much time just rehashing what went on, berating myself for not having done things differently, panicking because I can't change what I did before in the past, regret, you know, just beating myself up, being mean to myself about it. Or maybe I'm causing trouble in my outer life. Maybe I'm kind of trying to dredge up the conversation with people that really don't need to be getting phone calls from me at 3 a.m. to talk about this bullshit or whatever. You know, I'm just causing mischief in my own life as a result of not being able to process the content productively. At that point, it's gone off course and I need to come back to my sense of pure intention. I need to think about why I started in the first place. I definitely know that it's become unhelpful when it's not really moving anywhere, and when I've really just been obsessing over this one part of it and I just feel like it's not really, nothing's really moving and shaking. Actually what's happening is I'm thrusting myself into a state of stagnation and I'm going round and round on what I like to call the shadow work hamster wheel, you know, and then I know that it's maybe time to step back, take a break, have a look at it from another angle, cease shadow work for a period completely, use a different technique in shadow work, or look at a completely different piece of shadow content. Those are all options to me. I do not need to carry on the same hamster wheel if I'm really not getting anywhere. I can take a breather, okay? I can be good to myself. If I know that it's gotten to a place where it's unhelpful, it's just not doing anything for me, or there's nothing that I can conceivably take from it and learn from it, then it's okay to step away. It's okay to either reduce the influence of that piece of shadow content for the moment, or to eliminate that shadow work completely and move on to something else. I know that it's ceased to become helpful to me when I'm focusing way more on the other people in a situation that I'm analysing in shadow work, and I'm focusing very little on my own role. So for example, let's say that I'm looking at the relationship breakdown between myself and a family member, and we haven't spoken for a long time, but I'm kind of going back through all of the different scenarios and the experiences so that I can learn something about why I'm still feeling so badly about it, or so that I can heal from it ultimately. Let's say that I'm going through anger and I'm processing anger at that other person. I'm trying to kind of go through that and I'm trying to use that as the gateway. But somewhere along the way, I've gotten really, really tied up in just seething and feeling really malicious towards this other person, and getting into that state of total like self-righteousness and almost getting high on my own sense of being superior and of being the one in the right. Now, for a while, I could allow that to express itself, and I could see that as helpful because I could see that as something that really needs to come out. And I need to be honest with myself about that. I need to say to myself, like, okay, this is something that has not been given expression before. It really needs to be given expression now. So I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to let it go. But then there comes a time in shadow work where I've been in that mode for quite a while. And at that point, I need to be honest with myself about the fact that I might be trying to shirk accountability for where the real work is, which is in looking at my responsibility, my role in the relationship, what I can ultimately learn. I cannot change the other person's behaviour. I cannot go back in time and make them behave differently. I cannot help them to accept their responsibility, and I cannot force them to apologise to me. I cannot do any of those things. I'm not in control of that person, nor would I wish to be. My role in shadow work is about bringing stuff back to self. Yes, there is definitely room in shadow work for expressing the emotion of anger. There's definitely room in shadow work to hold that stuff that might need to come out, that might need to kind of flood out before I can get anywhere else. But it's on me to see when my shadow work has become unhelpful. It's on me to recognise when I'm spending far more time judging the other person and berating the other person and feeling like getting high on my own sense of self-righteousness. And it's on me to bring it back to self and have a look at what I can learn. You know, what took me into that situation in the first place? How did I make a mistake? How did I let my guard down? What is there for me to learn from it and actually move on from with it? If I've been somewhere for a specific amount of time in my shadowscape and I've been really hashing something out and mulling it over and not really getting to the other side of it, I stop and I ask myself, is this still helpful? Is this still a helpful exploration, or has this moved into the spectrum of not being quite so helpful, of just being a way to avoid accountability or shirk the work or become obsessed or fixated or ultimately lost inside these negative feelings? So I just really ask myself, hey, are you on the gravy train towards processing this shit? Do you feel like it's helpful? Do you feel like you're getting something out of it? Or are you really moving into that not so positive part where you are shirking your own accountability and you are really not getting anything done? I think that when people ask, is shadow work negative? Isn't shadow work actually unhealthy? Isn't it negative? Isn't it not really a good idea to focus on the stuff that's going wrong, or the stuff that feels painful, or the past memories that hurt you? I think what they're really asking, or kind of how it sounds to me from my perspective, is, isn't denial a better thing? Isn't it better to just not look at that stuff? And actually, the truth is that sometimes you need to accept what's there in order to get to anywhere else. You need to know your current location before you can make your move on the chessboard of life. You need to be clear about the root causes for your consistent negative habits and limiting beliefs before you can ultimately catch yourself in the act of playing out those patterns, and before you can ultimately make any other kind of choice. We are ruled by the things that we don't see. Whatever we resist persists. Whatever we suppress predominates. The more you push it away into the darkness, the more it manifests externally as fate, as Jung told us, as Jung explained. And that's dead on, that's dead right. Sometimes you have to look. You have to look at that ugly truth. You have to look at what you've been trying to avoid before you can actually have the keys to your life back, before you can start to make any other kind of choice. Shadow work is about repatriating those lost parts of you that the ego refused to let through the door. The ego did not send an invitation to those parts of you, so they went off and started having their own party deep down in the psychic depths, where they show up every now and again as blind rages or off-colour remarks or bitchy judgments about people, you know. They surprise you because you're not aware of them, because you've somewhere along the line decided that you don't fucking want to be aware of them, okay? The ego does not want them. They are the ego's unwanted children. What you're doing is you are repatriating in shadow work. You are throwing open the door. You are allowing those little unwanted children to come in and have their say, to talk about their experiences. You are agreeing to see them as just little lost fragments of you, rather than as demons and ghouls and nasty, threatening pieces of you that you have to push away. Because the more you push them away, the more you antagonise them. Just let them speak. Give them a little space. Learn about them. Don't be afraid to learn about them. There is nothing inherently negative about that. It's just important that on your shadow work journey, you do as I have done on mine, and you do as many other shadow workers have done on theirs. You check in with yourself every now and again and you say, is this still helpful? Is this helpful, or has this become a little unhelpful? Am I still on track, or have I gone slightly awry? And then you tweak as necessary. Shadow work is one of the most profound journeys that you will ever go through in personal development, because it really promotes that inner dialogue. It promotes that conversation that you have with yourself. You learn the sacredness of solitude when you do shadow work. You learn that you can have a conversation with yourself, be there for yourself, take accountability for yourself, be with yourself, hold your own hand. That's what you learn through doing shadow work, because you have to make those judgment calls, you know. And when people seek a mentor in shadow work, a guide to help them with shadow work, yes, absolutely, they are asking for that external accountability to be held for them to decide when things have become unhelpful and to get back on track. When you ask for a mentor in shadow work, when you employ somebody to help you with your shadow work, what you're really doing is you're gaining that extra accountability and that extra objectivity to make sure that you stay the course, that you check in with your pure intentions, and that you make sure that you are on track for doing the work and you're not getting sidetracked and you're not doing anything unhelpful. But ultimately, it's your judgment call. Somebody can be there for you to bolster you, to keep you accountable, but ultimately it's your judgment call, and you should still be learning how to have that amazing conversation with yourself. And any good shadow work mentor will help you to do that and will guide you in doing that. If my shadow work teachings float your boat and you would like more from me and you would like to dedicate the month of February to shadow work and to your journey with shadow work, then you can click below to the 29 Shadows tab on my website and you can learn all about the 29 Shadows exclusive video content that I'm going to be sending out in February of 2016. Thank you so much for joining me for this video about shadow work, and so much love, blessed be.